Hello everyone, my name is Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to talk about the second faction focus we've had for the Stormcast Eternals, because this one is going to give us an even more detailed look at some of these new units. In fact, there are now only two from the new starter set that we have not seen the War Scrolls for, and that is the Lord-Arcanum on his Griff Charger and these Castigators, I believe they are called. Yes, the Castigators. Everything else now, as of this video, we are completely up to date on. The first thing I have to say is I cannot believe how powerful these Stormcast Eternals are. If you love Stormcast Eternals, because these are just so good, like ultimately this is all going to boil down to the points costs of the models, because on paper they're fantastic. We've got a War Scroll for the Evocators, we've got the War Scroll for the Celeste Ballista and the Sequiturs. So let's start with the Evocators, and I must admit the models are definitely growing on me, apart from the awkwardness of this guy's pose. At first I wasn't so sure, now I like them. The idea of the Evocators is basically that they're somewhere between a battle mage and a paladin. They're not meant to be very good in like raw close combat power, but there is plenty here to like. First things first is they do 4 attacks, and that's already brilliant. The champion does an extra attack. That's 13 attacks for just 3 of them, and every one of those attacks hitting and wounding on 3s with -1 rend is pretty good. As something that's being compared to a paladin, you'd expect them to have 3 wounds and a 4-up save, which is exactly what they've got. When I first looked at the rules for these things, I was horrified, which might sound strange, but I misread the rule and it scared me because I thought they had just made a completely broken unit. When I was reading the Celestial Lightning Arc, in fact let me tell you what it does first. In the shooting phase you can re-roll save rolls of 1, so immediately it's like they're holding a Liberator shield, which is pretty cool. The slightly better effect is that when you're in close combat with a unit, you can pick that unit and roll 2 dice for every model in this unit, so that's 2, 4, 6 dice that you roll, and for each 4+, the enemy unit takes a mortal wound. The first time I looked at that rule, I thought it said roll 2 dice for every model in the enemy unit, and they take a mortal wound for every 4+. That would be absolutely disgusting. That means on average you'd be doing 1 mortal wound per model, and you would basically wipe out an entire unit in one go. That's scary. What they've got instead is more toned down, and thank goodness, because I would have been horrified if that was the real rule. On average you're looking at them doing an extra 3 mortal wounds basically on any target that they're in combat with, and that could go up to 6 mortal wounds, so it's a nice bonus. The best thing about the Evocators without question is their magical ability, because they're kind of sorcerers but they only know 1 spell. I actually thought they would have access to other spells, but no, they just have Empower. It's very easy to cast, and you can pick a friendly Redeemer or SACROSANCT unit, and I actually went and looked at some of the original Stormcast War Scrolls, and quite a lot of them have the Redeemer keyword, and I must admit I'd never really noticed it on there because I don't look at keywords that often. But basically they can re-roll failed wound rolls, which is fantastic, as we will see on the Sequiturs in a minute. Additionally, they can attempt to unbind enemy spells, so that's a very good defensive ability they've got there as well. Overall, I'm a big fan of the unit. Next up is the Celeste Ballista, and I'm loving this thing more and more every time I see it. But basically, because it's got 4 barrels, it can either shoot 4 shots at once, or it can do a single more accurate shot. If it fires a single shot, it's got double the range, so it can hit something at 36 inches, hitting and wounding on a 3, which is brilliant, with a fantastic -2 rend. But the good thing is if it hits, it automatically converts that hit into D6 hits. That's brilliant, and that's its chained lightning ability. When you're at half range, however, you can choose which profile you want to shoot with, and I can tell you now, statistically, always go for the 4 shots. It's much better. Then you sacrifice accuracy because you hit on a 5, but otherwise everything is exactly the same, but you're firing 4 shots. In that case, statistically, you are pretty much guaranteed to get a hit. If you're lucky, you might get a couple or more, and then those in turn generate D6 hits. It's very simple, it's very effective. The 2 crew members count as part of the same model, but they have to remain within 1 inch of the ballista. Obviously its movement is very low because it's meant to be in cover somewhere, firing down maybe from a fortress wall. But one thing I do love is this extra ability where if it's in cover, it adds 2 to its save. So it basically has a 2-up save in cover. It's very very cool, and as the first piece of Stormcast artillery, I absolutely love it. It's making me think I need to dig out my old Warhammer Fortress, I think it was called, and stick some of those on the walls, and you could do some absolutely epic siege battles with that. Don't forget, of course, if you have a Lord-Ordinator, you can shoot twice as well, so it's even better. Right, let's talk about the Sequiturs. These things are absolutely unreal. To be honest, they have no downside to them whatsoever compared to a normal Liberator. They are just straight up much better. It's all going to boil down to the points, basically. Are these going to be a similar points value, or are we going to have to pay quite a premium for them being so much more powerful? These are basically just like supercharged Liberators. If you look at the stat line compared to the hammers, they are basically exactly the same as a Liberator, but they are better at hitting. Even if you give the Liberator the swords, these are still better. They hit and wound on 3s with 2 attacks. Then on top of that, they also have the shields. My first thought for a unit like this would be, if you're going to make them far better in combat, maybe they would sacrifice defense, but that's not the case. They've still got shields that re-roll 1s when you fail. They've still got a 4+ save. They've still got 2 wounds, but even better than that, they can do this thing called channeling. They basically have magical weaponry, and they can either charge up the mace or they can charge up the shield. If you choose to charge up the shields, then they re-roll all failed saves, which is insane. If you choose to charge up the maces, you re-roll failed hit rolls, which again is ridiculous. Traditionally, the point of Liberators is that they form a wall of defense, and they're very hardy, they don't dish out too much damage, but they're very good defensively. Whereas here you have the ultimate version of a Liberator that's already as good defensively, it's better on the attack, and then it's versatile as well because you can supercharge its attack or defense ability to just make it incredibly good. Then on top of that, we've got the Great Maces. There aren't any pictures of them in here, but you actually get 3 of them in the new starter set. You can have 1 per 3 models, and then the Prime can take 1 as well. You definitely want to take one of these on the Prime, because he will be making 3 attacks with a weapon that's exactly the same, but it's got rend and double the amount of damage. Like, it's a win-win situation. There's no reason not to take one. I guess the only slight downside is that you can't have a shield with it, but if you want to dish out damage, those Great Maces are absolutely ridiculously good. On top of that, every time you make a hit roll of 6 or more for one of those Great Maces, it does D3 hits instead of 1 if the target is a demon or a Night Haunt, which is reflecting the fact that Sequiturs are out to hunt down demons and spirits and stuff like that. But yeah, they just seem very, very powerful. If you look at this picture here from the starter set, you can see the Great Maces there, and you've got 1, 2, 3. Because you've got 8 in the unit, it makes it completely legal because you need 1 per 3, and then the Prime here has got 1 as well. It's interesting that they've actually decided to give you a unit from a starter set that from the current War Scroll is completely optimized. In this situation in the past, normally you wouldn't get any of the special weapons at all, and you certainly wouldn't get a Prime with 1 either. So I'm definitely a big fan of Games Workshop moving in that direction. Don't forget as well with the Sequiturs that if you combine that with the spell of the Evocators, you can basically re-roll failed hit rolls and failed wound rolls, which is just ridiculous. Just quickly, to show you how good a unit of Sequiturs is, I've gone on Kablam's Math Hammer page for Age of Sigmar, which I actually helped him design this, which is really cool. Like, we were bouncing the ideas off each other on how to set out these boxes and what information would be useful. But what we've got on the left here is the 5 Sequiturs with the normal maces, and then the 3 including a Prime with the Great Maces. So they're going to make 6 attacks, but the Prime makes an extra 1. They're hitting and wounding on 3s. They've charged up their weapons, so they're going to re-roll the hit rolls, I believe it was. I've also assumed they've been empowered by the Evocators so that they're re-rolling their failed wound rolls as well. We've got 1 damage on the left for the normal maces, -1 rend and 2 damage for the ones on the right. I've matched them up against the Stormcast with a generic 4+ save, and they're going to do 11 damage, and that's not taking into account the fact the Great Maces have a 1 in 6 chance of doing D3 hits instead of 1. It's absolutely insane. If you're fighting something with no saves at all, you're looking at 19 damage from that unit. Someone tell me that I'm doing this wrong. long, please, because it just seems too good. Either that or they're just going to cost through the earth in points, but it just seems absolutely unbelievable to me. Anyway though, I am going to leave this video here because I've got 2 videos to edit and I think this has been long enough, but thank you very much for watching. And yeah, drop me a comment down below. Do you think these are overpowered? What are your thoughts on the War Scrolls? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're not good? Do you think they're too good? Not good enough? Maybe, I guess. Otherwise, I mean, there's so much to talk about, so it won't be too long until you hear from me, but I will see you guys really soon.